Well, welcome back to the blog this week, everybody. I'm proud to introduce you to Mary Felkins today. Hi, Mary.
Hi there, Miss Dina. How are you doing?
Good to see you here on Zoom.
Yeah,
Mary and I actually met in person,
good.
so I'm pretty excited about that. We went to a writer's retreat in February in
Mm-hmm.
Lake Gaston and got to meet. And so when I put a call out for interviews, Mary responded, and I'm so glad. So it's good to have you here, Mary. And
I'm glad to be here, and it is kind of interesting to think, well, we have met in person for real, and now it's Zoom. Sometimes it's the other way around, so this is great. I
right.
prefer to be sitting right across from you, but I'll take
Yeah,
Zoom.
that would be nice. This is the next best thing, though, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we're going to kick this off with you just introducing yourself to those who are watching so they can learn a little bit about you and your family, and then we'll get into some questions about your writing journey.
All right. So, Mary Felkins, I am originally from Houston, Texas. Not born and raised there, but born in Jackson, Mississippi. So I consider Houston my home. And my husband and I met and got married in '97, and we moved all the way to Hickory, North Carolina. We had two small children at the time, and then added two more. Sounds a little bit like we went to the store and picked them up, but
We all know
so
better than that.
yeah. It was kind of interesting. Boy, girl, boy, girl. We had the two, and then I got pregnant with the third one, and my oldest son said, "Well, I would like a brother," and I said, "Well, God's already made that decision, so you'll have to pray about it," which He did. And I said, "Lord, make it be a boy so that he doesn't ever lose, or doesn't think that you're not real." And so that's that one. And the same thing happened with my youngest. It's really funny. Well, I want a sister. So anyway, um, but my background is I worked as a registered and licensed dietitian. Went to school in Fort Worth at TCU, and I just like to eat. So I got a degree in nutrition. I mean, I thought, oh wow, you can study this for 4 years. And then, worked in a hospital setting, worked at MD Anderson and different things. I had a little private practice business in Houston before we moved, Cornerstone Nutrition Consulting. And then, which is really, when we moved here, I got wrapped up in home education, and just the nutrition part kind of faded away. But I look back and think I was always writing something as a child. I was always writing something, make believe stories, with no intention of thinking one day I want to be an author or write for real. It's very probably different than a lot of people say. It was just a way to have imaginary friends with five older brothers and sisters, and then 6 years between me and the rest. I think I just wanted to have friends. So that was part of it. But in my career, I was writing programs, weight management programs, and for pregnancy care center, they wanted to have a nutrition program for that. And even in home education, I just think there's just this thread that God was just weaving through. And then when my youngest was in eighth grade at home, I really started, these characters in my head started, I guess, talking louder and louder. And then I had this conversation in 2012 with my husband. We talked about this earlier, where financially we were somewhat of a crisis. And we were talking, and I said, "Well, I know what I'll do. I'll write a book."
That'll
Which,
fix everything.
yeah, yeah. And, my husband is thinking, that how's that going to pay the bills? But he has always been very supportive, kind of a there, dear, have fun with that. So, but God gave me a vision after it, just without a background in English lit or journalism, or the things that you think you're supposed to have that really are beneficial. Here I have a degree in nutrition, and I got a master's degree in nutrition.
Hmm.
Failed to mention that. And so, not that it was without value, but here I am in this place where I feel called to write. God has confirmed this. He's given me a vision of what this is going to look like, and that it's not going to be easy. So now what do I do? And I realized I need to get serious. So that's when I went to my first conference in 2013 at Blue Ridge Mountain Christians Writers Conference, with my way too long story of 200,000 words, thinking I'm just gonna slap that on the counter and everything will be fine. So it's very humbling to
Hmm.
think that ever went beyond that. But you just learn. I learned very quickly. I've got a lot to learn.
Yes,
And
yes, as we all do.
yeah.
So you mentioned you didn't really think about writing as a child professionally. So what did you want to be when you were a child?
You know, for a little while, I wanted to be a vet. And that came to me because I loved my dog. I was raised with smooth haired fox terriers,
Hmm.
best dogs ever, because my grandfather had them, he bred them, and that's what we had. I loved my dog. And I thought, but I might not like your dog, or I might not like your parrot, or your whatever creature you might bring in. And that sounds like an awful lot of school. So let's don't do that. And
Right.
I really did not, even with nutrition. I got to college or probably the orientation, and it was, well, what would you like? What major would you like to declare? Or maybe I was going through the program or something the summer before at TCU and thought, okay, nutrition, that that clicks with me. And mom was always making sure we had healthy meals. So there you go. That's that. I just went that route, and it was a way to finish in 4 years, and I was prepared to take the registration exam. It was just a little bit of a rule follower, and that seemed to fit.
Yeah. Now I remember reading something in the answers you sent to me before this about marrying Donny Osmond, and that kind of resonated with me because
Yeah,
I had a huge crush on Donny Osmond when I was a teen.
I did too. You know, I actually, this is my imagination at work. So I wasn't a writer, but I was writing, right? Making stories up. And I imagined that I was his wife. And I actually gave myself, because it's what authors do, we make up names for characters. And I actually named her Deborah. Guess what his wife's name is?
No,
Deborah Glenn. It's Deborah Glenn. And a friend in junior high very rudely handed me the Houston Chronicle with this announcement that Donny Osmond was engaged. So, number one, we're in gym class, which I hate. Number two, you're telling me the worst news ever. And her name is Deborah. This is terrible. He's not met me. How can you know that this is a woman of his
oh
dreams? But
my goodness, that's crazy. That's so
I
crazy.
do still like his music, and I do like his story. His life story is very intriguing, honestly.
Okay. So talking about marrying Donnie and all that kind of leads us into talking about romance. And
Yeah.
you are an inspirational romance author. So how did that come about? Why did you decide to write romance?
I didn't decide to write romance. I was I was at this conference with my story, and God used an agent who read my one sheet and said, the way I wrote the story the first time, the hero dies. But she said, I really think you like happily ever afters, don't you? I said, yeah, I do. And the truth is, I didn't even know there was a genre. This is how God can use anybody. I just really want that to be this message. Don't think, but I don't have to stop. He can use anybody. And she that spoke to my heart. I want things to turn out well in the end. So that means it's romance. That genre means they end up together. And I also enjoy being able to educate people that are not familiar with that, or they know secular romance, how this is distinctly different. And
Hmm.
I don't even market myself as a Christian romance author, but an inspirational, for fear that I will lose some people. I feel like in my experience, you say Christian and people think one of two things: it's either squeaky clean, they barely hold hands, or it's going to be very legalistic, preachy. And feedback is that the story I wrote is not either of those. So I want people to hear the truth. So that, yeah, the romance is a lane that I'm really comfortable in. I think about women's fiction. The story has not come to me. And as we were talking earlier too, the title, things like that, there's a whole nother set of rules and things to consider with that. It would be a whole nother education.
Hmm.
So yeah,
So,
that's a tagline, happily ever afters,
yeah,
what I write.
so what kind of challenges do you face with writing romance?
Primarily making sure that it is chaste, that They do have to have an attraction. They do kiss. And how do you keep in mind, for me, my own children, would I be uncomfortable if my daughters read this? And how do you make it be an emotionally driven scene so that it's not about all the touching and the hugging and all that? It's a real challenge. I mean, to think that there are whole books written about this and courses at conferences taught on this and workshops, it's not easy to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And also I've had some feedback. I posted a couple sentences that I'd written in this current book that's coming out next month, where the editor was, whoa, this is a little bit too fiery. And I thought, I don't ever intend for it to be. So I put it out on Facebook, and wide range, Christian responses, wide range from doesn't bother me at all, it's fine, to I'm a single girl, please consider how this makes me, where this might take my mind and make me feel things or see things that I don't want to when I'm not married. It was really interesting. So that's where you have to say, I know in my heart I'm trying to be authentic, and I'm married. I've got 4 kids. I'm familiar with things that an unmarried person might not be,
Mm-hmm.
but they do kiss. So I just strategically put that in there, the oops kiss and the, ooh, I liked that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's can take this further to you and I are absolutely getting married kiss at the end. So I don't want to just throw it in there casually, because it's so contrary to popular belief and culture. A kiss is really, really a big deal.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you that. I think we
Mm-hmm.
treat it like a
Mm-hmm. Like it's
taking out
nothing.
the trash, or,
Yeah.
yeah.
So talk a little bit about how you incorporate Christ and hope into your stories.
I do that. A lot of times I'll do a lot of work before I ever start writing. I try to determine what is called SEQ, just a story equation of their dark moment story and their lie and their fear and their wounds, so that when they come to the page, there's a lie that they believe that's contrary to the truth of Scripture. So all through the story, circumstances are working to challenge that lie, so that ultimately they come to the truth, which is a safe way of saying that's Jesus. The truth is Jesus. So I do that subtly with private thoughts. I try to use characters if they're coming to the place of, or an epiphany moment where they're realizing, oh, maybe the grass isn't purple, maybe the grass is green, whatever their lie is, or maybe I'm not an ugly duckling, maybe I'm a princess of the king. That happens in dialogue. I had this scene where I wrote it, and she's just alone in a chapel and kind of comes to this, and rewrote it to include her mom, kind of her spiritual mentor,
Mm-hmm.
who has ways of leading her to Christ or nudging her back into the church without saying, you heathen, get back in church. And subtly picking up her Bible and the daughter says, oh, are you going to church? No, I'm going to worship. There's a difference. Just little things like that, that I want the reader to kind of go, what was that? And kind of tune in, instead of have it just be this gospel presentation. So the hope can be too, if you reading a character and you so identify, oh, I believe that too. Yeah, I believe people can't change. Yes, yes, yes. And then you follow, hopefully the story is engaging enough. You follow along and see, okay, now they don't believe that anymore. Maybe there's hope for me too. Or this is, doesn't always wrap up so lovely. For some circumstances are going to stay yucky, but their heart is able to accept that because they're stronger in their faith. There's a
Very
lot of
cool.
little ways to do that.
So are any of your stories inspired by your own personal life or people that you know, true events?
They really are. Sometimes I know that very definitively, and sometimes it's more subtle. And I think, oh, yes, I do remember something like that. I think of course, we talked about professions too. While one of the characters, the first character I wrote is a emergency room nurse, I kept in a safe zone of hospital setting because I'd worked in a hospital setting. So I pick up everything you can imagine. I'm on an airplane and I see a man seated and a young lady has to squeeze in the passenger next to him. And I immediately think, now, what if this could be a story where this is a romance where they meet on an airplane, or um, I love to use letters. I have a dad that writes letters. He's a great historian, and some of those things really inspire me. And I didn't realize that until I'd written several manuscripts that letters keep popping up often, and I like to handwrite thank you notes. I'm probably a dying breed, but yeah, big things. I know too on a larger scale from a parenting standpoint, we've had a lot of disappointment in those precious four children and have taken a different turn than we had hoped. But I use that. I use that. It's a very redemptive process to take that, either what I'm feeling as a parent and put it into a character, or to show um, a 14-year-old adolescent boy in the story that is very similar circumstances, and kind of fixing that
Mm-hmm.
and putting it into a situation where I hope it will turn out.
Right.
So yeah, you just I really believe the Lord uses just the whole world as a classroom,
Mm-hmm.
and He's trying to show us opportunity and interacting, getting out of the writer's cave. I can just go up to the post office, have a little exchange, and think that just inspired an idea. So you just have to be a good student.
Yeah. Well, we have about 5 minutes left. So, with the time that we have, I want you to talk about your latest release a little bit. You Are the Reason.
Mhm.
Tell us what you want us to know about this book, maybe what the takeaway for readers is, or something about the characters and the storyline. Just entice us a little bit with your story.
All right. Well, the You Are the Reason is a soft title, so it's made to make you feel like you're sitting in on, their conversation, and so that's fun, and it's inspired by a song by the same title. That when I heard that, God gave me just this movie clip, as if He were creating a movie trailer, and a lot of the lyrics in there seem to resonate with the story. So, what if you had an inheritance that you didn't want, but it led to your greatest dream? Is really what's happening in the story. And I deal a lot with the problem of making judgments based on the way somebody appears, which again, I don't know that I thought about that as much from the beginning, but the more I worked, particularly with the hero, he's not somebody you would ever hire to handle your 1846 inheritance, this manor home that your mother has strapped you with before she passed away. And yet he's excellent, and he's late all the time. Why? Because he's helping homeless people, or he's giving a handout to somebody. And so I love that part of, you look at somebody and assume something, and we're often very wrong. And for her, it's being willing to answer the call that God has placed on your heart, and realize that He has His very best on the other side of it. You want it orderly and predictable, and she's a CPA, so she does 2 + 2 is 4, and wants to stay in that status quo. But what would happen if you did a crazy thing and packed up and moved and embraced your inheritance? It sounds crazy, but God's behind that. And that's where your heart's desire really is.
Mm,
So, and
sounds
so you are the reason, really, that you can be God. God, you're the reason why I'm doing this, or the hero and heroine, you're the reason I'm leaving Chicago to come to Louisiana to start my life all over. And just that's, it was fun
yeah.
to write.
Well, it sounds good. I think you'll do well with that. And it's coming out in mid-November, which is the same
Uh,
time pretty much that this Zoom interview is going to go live on my blog. So as people are watching this, hopefully and prayerfully, your book will be available and
yeah,
people
that's
can
the
snap a
idea.
copy of it.
Yeah.
So I'll be including with this post all of the ways they can connect with you through your website and social media links and that kind of thing. But aside from that, what could people do to support you in your writing journey?
Oh, well, I appreciate that. That's a very rarely asked question. I'm trying to think if anybody's ever asked me that. No, just to be on my website, maryfelkins.com. If you don't want to have your inbox flooded, I do a quarterly author newsletter with some giveaways. And if you do like the opportunity to win freebies, there's that. And then inspirational post once or twice a month. And then I do have a book launch team that for each time I'm doing a new release, I will gather a tribe of reader cheerleaders. So so that's great. But just to have the book and to if you read it and you like it, just to shout it out. Sometimes people get tired of just hearing from the author. I know I do, and it's just really amazing to see the hand of God for somebody to authentically say, I bought this, I read this, I liked it, and to post a review. Don't tell me, I don't care. Tell Amazon. Amazon cares, right?
They
For
do
whatever
care.
reason. That doesn't matter. I don't take that with me to heaven. But so just connect on my blog and social media. Um, Although I'm trying not to be on Instagram more than I should. That's a little bit of a weakness, but it's so much fun.
Good. Well, thanks for sharing today. Any last words before we close out of here?
Just, I really appreciate the opportunity to interact here. And I was just actually reminded of a scripture. I had thought one of the questions might be if there was a life verse. And I thought, is there a life verse for me? But Romans 11:29 about God's calling and his gifts are irrevocable. And I really take that to heart. And I think if God has called you to do something, whether it's inherit a plantation house or write a book, just don't be don't be quick to look at your background and your limited experience and think you can't do it. And the persistence really pays. So dream big and let your faith take you there.
Yeah, well, that's good advice. And that might be just for me today because I think every single day I think, what in the world am I doing?
Oh, oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You're being obedient, and we don't always know what that looks like.
Mhm.
Some of those things are just kind of kept quiet in heaven until we're there to figure out what it's all about. But
Yeah. Well,
so
this has been fun.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's always fun to interact with real people. I know you ever tell people, what do you do? Well, I talk to imaginary people and they
Uh-huh.
kind of have this moment of, what? Oh, I write.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But those imaginary people seem so real.
They
They're
are.
my friends. They're my family.
They are. Yeah. The secondary characters like to have their own story. I know that for sure. I'm like, well, I didn't see that coming, but sure. Let's see if we can pull this off.
Right. Well,
So,
thanks, Mary. It's been fun getting to know you and hear about your writing, and congratulations on your book coming out. That's really
thank
exciting.
you. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's
All
been
right.
great. So
Bye.
have a great rest of the day.
Too.
Thank you.